Hi, everyone. Welcome to our training about antecedent strategies. So, what do we mean by antecedent strategies? What are we talking about?
Before the behavior.
Yes, it's before the behavior. So, there are things we could do before behavior. And what are these things? What kind of effect might they have on behavior?
Evocative effect.
They could
How
have,
the outcome
yeah,
will turn out.
yeah, they could cause behaviors to be more likely to happen. And what's the other thing that they could do?
Decrease of behavior.
Yeah, lower the likelihood of a problem behavior occurring. So these antecedent strategies are going to talk about ways to do that. But first, it's important that we kind of understand the workings of the antecedent. And there's two parts of an antecedent. There's the motivating operation or the discriminative stimuli, or SD as we call it. So the motivating operation, it says here, has behavior altering effects, but it also has value altering effects. I guess let's talk about what a motivating operation is before we talk about the behavior and value altering effects that the motivating operation has on behaviors and consequences. So what's the motivating operation all about? Well, right here it says that motivating operations normally alter the probability of behavior by altering the value of the consequence. So what does that mean? When I first heard that, it didn't make sense to me. What does it mean?
Well, I know, and there's two different like main types of motivating operations. They can either increase the value or decrease the value of a
Yeah.
reinforcer depending on like the situation.
So what's an example?
Let's say I haven't eaten in 3.5 days because the grocery stores are closed, and
Geez, where are you
you know,
living?
yeah, I've been my shopping, dude.
In my kitchen.
I'm shopping.
No shopping, I'm shopping, and this would definitely it would be an establishing operation which increases the value of food as a reinforcer, which would make me more likely to try to find a different grocery store that's open.
Okay, yeah. So if we go, so sometimes motivating operations are being deprived a certain reinforcer, right? So if we go a while, and we know this, we're all behavioral creatures. When we go a long time without eating, for instance, what becomes the main priority in our minds and in our behaviors?
A Big Mac.
A Big Mac, right? So, as we go without food, that Big Mac becomes more and more valuable to the point that all of our behaviors are kind of leading towards access to food, right? And what behaviors are we engaged in? Well, behaviors that have been reinforced in the past when that similar antecedent's in place. So when we're hungry, we might be thinking about going to the refrigerator, going out to eat, going through the drive-through. Those are all behaviors that we may engage in order to access food. And the longer we go without food, the more valuable it becomes as a form of reinforcement, the better it is. And we've all been there where we went a long time without food or drink, sorry, and we take that drink of water, and there's nothing special about the water, but man, it tastes like the best water ever, because we are that thirsty. So we could see that throughout the day, depending on the moment of time, the motivating operations come into place and they increase the value of the consequence, or simply saying that they just make the consequence that much better, more powerful. So, and the opposite is true too. After we eat, the value of eating more is in the dirt. It's not very valuable. Not many of our behaviors would be leading towards accessing food. So, depending on, and think about maybe exercise. If you engage in a lot of exercise and then afterwards you're probably very motivated to eat and drink and rest, so those things increase after exercising, and it's likely that we'll engage in behaviors that would lead us to those consequences. So that's the motivating operation. Not something that we could readily see, but something that's kind of happening all the time throughout the day for us. The discriminative stimuli, or SD, is a momentarily alter the probability of behavior by signaling a consequence is available. So, what does that exactly mean?
It signals reinforcement is available. So, like an example would be an open sign on the restaurant or the grocery store that Brandon was talking about. That's a signal that reinforcement is available so that you can enter the grocery store and do your shopping.
Yeah. So, and these things are kind of things we see in the environment many times, right? Like the McDonald's arches signal food's available. The grocery store signals food's available. The water fountain signals drinks available. The bathroom sign signals the bathroom is available. So it signals that reinforcement is available to us. And it could cause behaviors to become more likely to happen because reinforcement is available. Now, just because one of these things is in place doesn't mean we're going to engage in behaviors to access the consequence. But if they both are in place, we have a motivating operation and we have an SD in place. It causes a situation to make behaviors much more likely to happen. So discriminative stimuli, like the very easy thing to think about maybe is like an open sign or something like that. The signals that, hey, reinforcement is available. And, we as clinicians should be an SD for reinforcement, that we signal to our VIPs, we signal to our stakeholders that reinforcement is available and that they want to engage in our work and want to engage with us as well. So the SD and motivating operation. So why are these important to understand? Well, if they kind of link up, it's going to cause behaviors to become much more likely to happen. So when we see at the top here of this table, we have an EO for reinforcement. Well, that's an establishing operation, and that's the motivating operation. And then the AO makes behaviors a lot less likely to happen. So when we have the EO in place and the SD in place, it's going to cause the behaviors to become much more likely to occur. And the beautiful thing about this is the more you kind of understand these two dimensions of the antecedent, the more easily you can manipulate environmental contingencies to make behaviors more likely to happen or less likely to happen. Think about it. If we were very hungry for food and we pulled in and we saw that the the restaurant is closed, it's not likely we could engage in behaviors to access that consequence at that time. So, probably not going to engage in behaviors then. But if we pulled in, we're very hungry and we pull in and the store is open, well, that's most likely we will engage in behaviors. So thinking about our VIPs, what are some times that you altered the motivating operation or discriminative stimuli in your work, or both? We had a VIP that kept going into the kitchenette at our BL program, and we decided to give a try of altering the SD. So we put a close sign on the door that it was closed during certain times, it wasn't available, because we wanted that VIP to be engaging in more program activities than running in to seek food. And we hoped that would cause the behavior to be a lot less likely to occur. So that was
I
just one
know.
example. Go ahead.
I know one example. At least recently, I wasn't on the case specifically, but I know they've utilized like a color card to indicate like red. Either I know I think they just don't have a color to indicate that bedtime was available. But one time at like 9 o'clock at night, they put out a card that's like a green colored card that says signals that bedtime is available. They can go upstairs and go to bed to prevent the person from maybe going to bed at like 7 p.m., especially in the wintertime when it's dark out. It can get a little confusing for people of, what time I'm really supposed to go to bed if they don't have a good concept of time.
Oh, nice. Okay, so it's
Yeah.
like in like a nursing home or something like that.
Yeah, well, more actually, one of our VIPs
Oh, I
uses
see.
it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very cool. So signaling when reinforcement is available.
Hmm.
And just because the signal's in place doesn't mean that we're going to go engage in sleeping behaviors. But if we're very
No, exactly.
tired and the
Hmm.
consequence, is very valuable, then it is much more likely that we would engage in that behavior. Do you guys have any other examples? What about like we had a VIP that maybe is like we had the VIP that was engaging in a lot of problem behaviors to access food, for instance, right? So we suspected they may be hungry, and it could be a medication interaction or something like that, but they're hungry throughout the day, and they're engaging in pushing through staff and to access food at different public outings. So what might be a good strategy to implement to help this VIP reduce the occurrence of these problem behaviors by altering the motivating operation?
By offering food before the behavior happens.
Yeah, by giving food throughout the day, teaching them to access food more appropriate ways, making sure they're satiated with food. And what we're doing is we're changing the motivating operation. We're altering it to become an AO or an abolishing operation, that the consequence of receiving more food isn't very high. The value of that isn't really high. So a lot less likely that the VIP would engage in the behavior. So another example here, we talked about SDs and we talked about MOs. So what are some things we could do to encourage? Well, I guess with the sleeping example, that's going to encourage behavior. But what's another example of changing one or two of these dimensions to encourage behavior or to cause behavior to become more likely to happen? When might we want to do that?
Around the similar time that the behavior is occurring.
Yeah, like what behavior?
mm, Food seeking, maybe around
Okay.
lunchtime.
Okay, so we're going to teach them
Like
to like,
socializing, interacting with peers and staff.
okay, and what are we doing?
Well, at least before you go out in the community, let's say the person is, I know we had an example of somebody going to the gas station stealing hot dogs and something. And before they go out, make sure that they have plenty of snacks and plenty of food to the point where they're like, you know what? I don't really want the hot dog anymore. I just had all this like decent snacks. I'm satiated. I'm good. I don't need to do this.
Right. But what about times we might want to like see the behavior happen or encourage the behavior? What can we do? Say and you might be thinking, well, why would we want to encourage behavior? I don't know
So
if you're thinking
if
that.
if one of your goals is to work on getting a VIP to exercise or to remember an item, to put it close to the door or close to their room or close to where they're active in the morning so they don't forget it. So you're going to put something in place, a reminder of, hey, this is yours and you need it for the day, something like that.
That's a good thought. And which part of the antecedent are you manipulating there, Joanne?
You're adding something to the environment for
Yeah,
them
you're
so it'll
altering
be
the
a good.
SD,
Yep.
right? You're altering the SD there. What about teaching mans? What for food? Maybe we're teaching a man for food. When might we want to do that if we're thinking about the motivating operation?
When they haven't
Well,
eaten for a while.
Yeah, so before lunch, right? Before lunch or before a big meal, it would be much more likely the person receiving food as a consequence would be very valuable to them. They begin engaging in man trials, learning how to request, and then when they receive the food, it would have that super reinforcing effect that they would be kind of deprived it a little bit, and now they're accessing it. So here we're thinking a lot about the motivating operation, and we're altering the motivating operation to make behaviors more likely to occur because we want the person to be engaging in manding and we want them to do it a, a ton of times throughout the day. So thinking about teaching someone to man for an item when that item is very valuable is important. Does anyone have any other examples they could share with us?
Yeah, so like if you're practicing manding, say they're eating a bag of pretzels, and you know that after eating a bag of pretzels that are very salty, they're going to be more likely to want to drink. So if you have, like a water bottle or a cup of water out, that could be the ST that it's available if it's close by to them. And then you're capturing the motivating operation of them wanting a drink. So then they'll be more likely to demand for the drink when it's available after they eat.
Very nice. Very cool. All right, guys, does anyone have any questions about SDs or motivating operations? Okay. So we're going to talk about generic antecedent intervention. We're going to get right into interventions now. These interventions are just important for our work. It's kind of what we're going to be doing throughout the day is altering antecedent strategies. And the first ones we're going to go over are these generic antecedent interventions. They also call them default intervention antecedent interventions as well. And what is generic antecedent interventions all about? What does this mean?
You don't need to know the function of the behavior.
That's right. You don't need to know the function behind behavior in order to recommend these interventions. So these are great interventions, all the time, but they're also great right off the bat. If you're doing an FBA trying to figure out the function behind challenging behavior, we can implement these antecedent strategies right away to help try to improve our VIP situation. And I don't want to go in and like have this whole playbook laid out with all of these interventions, but I'm going to pick ones that are kind of lacking in my VIP's life. And those are the ones I may choose to start implementing to help my VIP. And you'll see what these are, and it makes sense why they might be effective in our VIP's life. So I look to see if they're engaging in some of these or if they're not. And I recommend that maybe we could start doing some of these things. So let's take a look at generic antecedent interventions where we don't need to know the function to recommend these strategies. So let's take a look. Environmental enrichment, so increasing stimulation, attention, and access to tangible activities. So here we have environmental enrichment, and there's all the science behind it under the mechanisms. We're really not going to get into that, but it has motivating operation effects because if we have an enriched environment, there's probably a lot of attention going around, a lot of us. I'm not going to want to escape an enriched environment. I probably won't need additional sensory stimulation in the form of problem behaviors because the environment is providing that. It's going to have discriminatory effects and contingency breaking effects. So environmental enrichment. And how many times are we trying to help a VIP complete hygiene or spend more time doing their bathroom routine? Well, making that environment like, taking a tub, for instance, it's like you want to make that tub super fun and enriched place. What are some ideas we can do to like enrich like the bathroom environment or any other environment?
Music, like you said, Mike, bubbles. Like I remember when we were younger, just as kids, they market this shampoo to have all these colors and there's different scents on it. You can even have like those washcloths when you dissolve and use it. There's a toy on the inside. The what is that? The shower curtain could be something that you like, stuff like that.
Yeah, so and it's like with our VIPs, it's like I like the idea of like having them go out and like purchase some hygiene products of their own. They're in the store smelling it, they're getting excited to use a new item and those things. A radio or music in the bathroom could make it more enjoyable. Listening to a YouTube video while we do our morning routine, we're kind of pairing this environment with a super fun, enriched environment, and it's going to help break some of these functions behind behavior. Okay, so an environmental enrichment, make that environment real fun. Antecedent exercise, engage the person in physical aerobic activity. So making sure that our VIPs have access to walks, have access to individualized exercise that they like. I'm not gonna like have them like run a marathon, but I'm gonna pick an activity that they would like to engage in because all my plans should be individualized to the VIP and making sure that it's like a good ratio of this is maybe 3 times a week for a half hour. We're going to go out and do a walk. We're going to help our VIP engage in exercise. And when we engage in exercise, we feel better. Those endorphins are released in our body. So it's going to have an AO for pain and anxiety reduction. So our body's going to be able to kind of manage itself more properly, reducing pain and anxiety, especially when we engage in exercise. And it's going to give them access to positive reinforcement in the form of feel good, feeling better, and also access to new environments, perhaps. So antecedent exercise, and it's no surprise, guys, that these are the generic strategies. I'm sure you're thinking now when we're going through them. So antecedent exercise is another one. Has anyone implemented antecedent exercise effectively with their VIPs or environmental enrichment?
I have a client that I take to the gym every week. Um, and the main goal was originally physical activity, so we made that part of our routine every single week. Um, but as the weeks went by, as the sessions went by, we have been also working on multiple different um behaviors at the same time, such as, initiating positive social conversations, manding, asking for breaks. There's so many different things that you can do within those exercising sessions or physical activities that you won't even realize until you're working on them and you see those multiple things that you can collect data on. So, um, it's a really good strategy to use with multiple different clients, if not all.
Nice, Carlin. Well, nice job like creating opportunities to practice other behaviors that we're working on too. So yeah, antecedent exercise. Have you seen anxiety relief in your VIP when you're
Oh,
when
definitely.
oh great. Very
Most
nice.
definitely.
See,
He didn't have as many opportunities to engage in those social interactions and social activities with other people, so this was like a really great opportunity to introduce exercise while also working on those things that he wants to work on. So it's been a really good positive outcome so far.
that's great. And think about, the effects it could have on like the amount of medication someone takes. If they're on
Hmm.
blood pressure medication, cholesterol, this could have like huge impacts on reducing these medications and helping our VIPs live a better quality of life. So antecedent exercise, guys. Relaxation exercises, these leisure activities that we could help our VIPs with. So engaging in the behavior that is incompatible with emotional behavior, progressive relaxation, behavioral relaxation, practicing coping skills, deep breathing, meditation, listening to chill music. All could be ways that we're helping our VIPs relax, playing board games, reading, watching movies, all these kind of behaviors that could help our VIPs relax. And then we could bring it out if we need to during some tough situations, and these can have pain or anxiety reduction effects as well. So teaching our VIPs, helping them regulate their emotions, and I see this kind of strategy in a lot of your behavior support plans that you guys write. Practicing these coping skills. But think about adding antecedent exercise as well to this idea. With relaxation exercises could be an effective way to go about things. Relaxation. I had a VIP who would fight with their family member all the time, and the antecedent exercise was super important part of his regulation, where we'd go and take a walk in the community. And I remember pulling up to their house many times where they would be actively engaged in an argument, and we took that break and we went for a little walk in the community, and we returned, and everything was much calmer, and we were able to talk things out and calm down with a level head. So just another example of kind of implementing a simple strategy here, guys, that could be very effective. Cushioning antecedent predictors modify events that evoke problem behaviors as to abate problem behaviors, make them less adversive. So, we're kind of making, so how can we make something less adversive? So say
By
we're giving
pairing it with something. Oh,
okay, thank you. No, I appreciate it.
I
Yeah,
was gonna
pairing
say
with something.
by pairing it with something preferred or a preferred activity that they enjoy doing already.
Okay, yeah. So pairing maybe the antecedent that's causing problem behaviors with something more enjoyable, giving choices, time of day choices, which is another strategy we're going to talk about. So we're going to modify, we're going to recognize what kind of antecedent is evoking problem behaviors or causing behaviors to become much more likely. And we're going to modify those to make them less adversive for our VIPs. And maybe it's just the presentation, making sure we have strong rapport with that person, making sure we present it in a fun, engaging way. And maybe that would be the ticket to help this VIP engage in some of these tasks that might, in this case, that might be evoking problem behaviors. Do not mention bad behaviors. And I like to see this, guys, in your plan. And I think it's an important strategy for your challenging behaviors. And like a number one antecedent, generic antecedent strategy in your plans Could be do not mention bad behaviors, especially if you notice, we're going on to a case and the stakeholders or the people around the VIP want to kind of talk about bad behaviors in front of them. And I know like I want to be a signal for reinforcement. I don't want to be a signal that every time I show up, we're going to talk about all the bad things that this person is engaging in. That's going to hurt my relationship. It's going to destroy my rapport with the person. And that person is probably not going to be likely to want to engage in applied behavior analysis activities. So refrain from discussing problem behaviors in front of the person. What do you guys do to help kind of get around this? Because we have to record data. That's like the cornerstone of our work. What do we do to get around this problem?
Go to a separate location to talk about it.
Yeah, schedule an additional meeting, go to a separate location to talk about it, collect data that you'll say, hey, I'll review this later when I get to my office. And we could, if you could call me later and we could talk about it privately. I don't want to, whenever I show up to a session, turn it into kind of a shaming session where we're just talking about the bad things that person may have engaged in throughout the week. So don't mention bad behavior, a very powerful, easy strategy to implement. Um, and coming up with other ways to kind of allow the person to report on the poor behaviors or the challenging behaviors that we see from our VIPs. Medical treatment. So refer the client for medical treatment. So a very important strategy, guys, especially coming onto a case, asking about when the last physical was, asking, when the last time they saw a doctor is. Many times our VIPs don't want to be going to the doctor. They may avoid those kind of activities. So when was the last time they're seen by a doctor? I think, hey, are any of these problem behaviors related to any pain or discomfort the person could be experiencing? So making sure that someone is in front of a doctor could get cleared that they aren't suffering from any medical problems is super important. Think about ear infections, sore throats, GI issues, stomach pain, nausea. Those things can evoke problem behaviors. It's like I know when I'm not feeling well, I don't want to be asked to do anything additional. I want to rest and feel better. So think about our VIPs who might not be able to communicate that and might be suffering from a medical issue that no one's aware of. So making sure that person gets in front of a doctor just to rule out that there's no medical things going on that's evoking problem behaviors. So, and a really important step during our FBA process right off the bat. Non-contingent restraints, we're not going to talk about this one, but we don't use anything like this. Physical and mechanical restraints, we're actually not allowed to use anything like this. So we're not even going to think about it. We're not going to get into it right now. So those are the generic antecedent strategies. And guys, again, those generic are good for everyone. And I'm going to notice that where my VIP may be lacking in those areas and try to introduce some of these activities to them so they could live a better quality of life by also reducing problem behaviors. So these next strategies are all about function-based strategies. So these are strategies after we determine the function. It's either escape, attention, tangible, or automatic, and a behavior can have multiple functions, as we know. So we're going to choose these strategies based on the hypothesized function behind problem behaviors. So let's get into it. And the first ones are all about escape maintain behaviors. And they're the most strategies for escape maintain behaviors because that is the most common function for problem behaviors, escape from instructional stimuli. So there's the most research has been done. So stimulus fading in and gradually reintroducing a task or demand in duration or frequency. When have you used this strategy effectively?
When a VIP had engaged in aggression, holding, and they were looking for attention, holding that attention until um, after the aggression, and then giving him the attention when the appropriate behavior had
Okay.
happened.
So that's kind of like a consequence strategy, but how would we implement this idea for an antecedent strategy?
I've done this with a client who we're working on just increasing the variety and time spent out in the community. And so just taking really small steps to that and kind of like breaking that big goal into smaller like TA steps. And so like the first step was like, we're just going to go to the parking lot and then we're leaving, and explaining those situations beforehand, explaining those expectations. And then, you know, couple times of doing that. And then we had, all right, now we're going to go inside this time. And now we're going to go down into like the pool. And so just fading things in very slowly, meeting the client where they're at in those moments.
I love that. Yeah, very nice example. Thank you, Brittany. Yeah, where we're going to slowly expose someone to kind of a new activity. We're not going to jump right into it, but do it slowly over time. And I think the same thing about TAs as well. Like we might have a TA to do like laundry. Well, maybe I have the person just do like the last step of the task, the chain. And I'm slowly going to fade in more and more of the task as we move forward, as that person builds endurance and context reinforcement. I'm going to slowly require a little bit more and shape the behavior. So stimulus fading in could be a great strategy and something to think about. Um, and many times when working with some of our stakeholders, they'd be like, they should do it already. Maybe you guys heard those kind of things. But we're slowly going to be exposing them to a new activity or something that they've kind of been not wanting to engage in, but still an important skill. So we're going to slowly introduce it again to them. So stimulus fading in and graduated exposure and desensitization. So another example of exposing or stimulus fading in, or someone has a phobia and we're slowly going to expose them. Now, it's really important. We're trauma informed here, and we know kind of the reasons behind the phobia, and as to not kind of just expose them right off the bat, but take baby steps. And with our VIPs, we want to make sure that we have the consent to do this, and you are being directed by a BCBA for this kind of strategy, exposing someone to something they may have a phobia of. And the number one strategy here with exposure is to help them practice relaxation exercises at first, or relaxation training, and then exposing them to kind of things they may have a phobia of. But again, please make sure you're working with your BCBA and taking the appropriate steps for this kind of strategy. Okay. Curricular instruction and revision. I mean, same kind of idea. And I like this slide a lot because there's a lot of strategies baked into this slide. So some ways to alter tasks and demands, or alter timing. Hey, we're just going to do math for 5 minutes and then we're going to be able to go play. Embed demands within reinforcing activities. I worked with a VIP that was, anytime they received any kind of directive from staff, they were likely to refuse. And I've noticed this over and over, and I had to be very careful what I said. I had to really think about how I was gonna present um, different ideas to the VIP, because they were likely to refuse anything that was presented. So what we did is, during really fun preferred activities, we put directives or demands in place during that time. Like, for instance, we were out to eat at a restaurant. Hey, can you pass a napkin? Can you pass the salt shaker? Hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate you helping me. We went bowling. Hey, hand me my bowling ball. So just kind of like putting those kind of antecedents in place during super reinforcing activities, so we could reinforce that. Providing assistance, and providing prompting and assistance to help our VIP engage in the activity. And it's something that we would want to fade away really quickly. So make sure we're providing assistance. I know I'm much more likely to engage in an activity when I have someone that's helping me, right? So providing assistance could be a great strategy that we can use to help our VIPs engage in some of these tasks. Increase predictability. So we may say, hey, like, we're going to be transitioning to the community in 10 minutes. Just wanted to give you a heads up that we'll be leaving within 10 minutes. So kind of reviewing what the upcoming, I think about transitions a lot. Curricular revision. So changing what we're working on to make it more approachable to our VIPs. And I think about, like, our leisure skills and things like that with our VIPs, how we could change games and activities to make them more user friendly for our VIPs, and something we should be actively thinking about to make sure that all our VIPs are able to engage in the craft for the day, a program, and set it up in a way that's kind of user friendly to them and adaptive to them and what they could do, and then modify features of the task. Have you guys ever used any of these strategies and were successful with them? And can you give us an example?
So for my one VIP who is learning Braille letters again, we started learning it. He was aversive to it at first, and what I do is I change the location where we do it. So sometimes we will do it inside the day program, And sometimes we'll take it out on the porch with some fresh air and even bring some food or snacks while we do it. So that has reduced his adversiveness to it.
Very nice. Very good. Very cool. Anyone else? I'm sure you guys provide assistance to your VIPs all the time, when they're engaging in a certain activity, right? Okay. Providing choices, giving your VIP choices and giving them choice about what they want to do next, the task, the type, the order, the timing of activities. We're going to provide choices, and a common strategy that we teach a lot about, and also a very effective strategy, providing choices to the person and allow them to choose the activity next, or when they'd like to do it, or the order of the task, to make it less adversive, providing choices. So time contingent escape. So what are we doing here? So you're going to see this time-based schedules come up. And we talk about this a little bit during our schedules of reinforcement training, but time contingent escape, what are we doing here?
Providing breaks.
Yeah.
Nice. Jinx, nice. Tag team in that answer. I love to see the teamwork. Yeah, we're providing breaks. We're providing breaks throughout the day. So, and we talk about this. I just talked about this with someone that has a VIP at a workshop, and they're engaged in a lot of task behaviors. They're not kind of engaging in their work throughout the day. And we talked about giving this person more frequent breaks, especially at first, where we're going to provide a break, not contingent on any kind of behavior. We're going to provide a break throughout the day to encourage more work when we're sitting at the table and fewer off-task behaviors. So providing breaks throughout the day. And you'll see this time contingent escape is just kind of delivering the reinforcement on a time-based schedule. And we're going to talk about this 3 more times. And we're going to start to speed up a little bit, guys, just because we're talking a little bit. This training's a little bit longer than the other ones. Relocate the client or others, move the person to a different setting permanently or temporarily. We see this all the time in classrooms and those kind of things, sitting by your friends and like you're goofing off. Well, the teacher moves you to the other side of the room. So you're less likely to engage in those problem behaviors. So move the person to a different setting permanently or temporarily. Asma talked about this, moving her VIP outside, pairing it with that enriched environment, that nice temperature outside, and we're practicing Braille. So that's an awesome skill. Move location of activities, same idea here. Activities are performed in different settings. We have Premack's principle, or grandma's rule, where grandma told us, eat your veggies before you get dessert. Well, we're encouraging a low probability behavior followed by the high probability behavior. First, we're going to brush our teeth, then we can read a story. So the high probability task serves as reinforcement for the low probability task. And even as managers and even for you guys as BSCs, like a lot of times the task we're avoiding should be the first thing we work on throughout the day, and then do those easy tasks like check your email, check your Teams after you do your behavior support plan. And then those easy tasks will serve as reinforcement for the more difficult tasks. So and it's kind of hard to do. You really have to discipline yourself to kind of engage in that type of behavior. But an important strategy too, to help our VIPs, this first then statement or first next statement, or grandma's rule. Thanks, grandma. Behavioral momentum. We're going to do kind of like a little bit of the opposite. We're going to practice some high P behaviors, or behaviors that are likely that our VIP will engage in, and then a low P behavior. And there was a great example in this book about sleeping I read, where they were like, hey, like working with a kid who's having trouble going to sleep. And they were like, hey, like, all right, give me a hug. And it was the mom, of course, doing this, not the clinician. Okay, give me a hug. Great job giving me a hug. All right, pick a book out. Good job picking a book out. All right, time to lay down to bed. And that was the low P behavior, laying down in the bed. And the person was much more likely to do it after these after we kind of started this behavioral momentum. We do this with TAC training, DTT, when we're doing discrete trial training, to try to get a low P behavior to occur with our VIP. So behavioral momentum, another strategy that we may think about to encourage behavior. So those are all the function-based strategies for escape. And now we have attention. So time contingent delivery of attention. So again, we see this time-based schedule come up where we're just providing attention on a time-based schedule. And I think it's important to note, guys, we talked about providing breaks on a time-based schedule. We talked about delivering attention on a time-based schedule. I really want you to pay close attention to kind of like what kind of attention, what kind of breaks are reinforcing to our VIP. So how would we determine that? How would we figure out what kind of attention? Because it's not just all kind of attention. It's certain qualities of attention that are probably reinforcing our VIPs, or certain quality of breaks that are reinforcing our VIP.
Maybe knowing their preferred items or activities.
Knowing their preference is a great way to start. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, knowing the preferences. What else? What else can really clue us in here?
During your FBA process, you'll be doing like a QA/BF, which will help you determine whether it's physical attention they want, tangible items, and help that determine your interventions and strategies.
Yeah, help direct us to what function we should be looking at. What's a good data collection form that might give us ideas about the quality of the reinforcer?
Your ABC data sheet.
Yeah, your ABC data sheets. If I see like a similar consequence, person goes into the music room, person goes into the music room, person is redirected to the music room. Maybe I'm like, hey, maybe this music room is pretty reinforcing to this VIP. Maybe I should do that for my time contingent of escape behaviors, that I'm going to kind of deliver the music room on a time-based schedule if I could. And then attention. Hey, like this person engages in this behavior, and then they get everyone to come and look at them, right? So we're like, oh, wow, this happens over and over again. This person must find this kind of attention very important. And, we all kind of like could change our behaviors based on our VIP's preferences and what they find reinforcing. And we do this all the time because I feel like all you guys don't present yourself the same to all the VIPs you work with. They kind of tailor fit your approach based on kind of their preferences and what they find reinforcing. So those are the things we want to deliver for these time-based schedules. Okay, what kind of attention, and that's what I want you guys to think about, what kind of attention does this VIP find reinforcing? Those are the kind of attention we want to deliver on this time-based schedule. What kind of effect do these schedules have on behaviors, would you say? If I'm delivering reinforcement not contingent on behavior, what kind of effect would that have on behavior?
Going to decrease it?
Yeah, it's going to suppress it. It's going to decrease it. So this is a great way to reduce problem behaviors, is to deliver the reinforcement on a time-based schedule. Discriminative stimulus control strategies, the transfer discriminative stored control to natural SDs and S deltas for attention. So here we have an example of teaching, and that sounds complicated. I mean, like what they're doing is like teaching the person to access attention more appropriately with like a fist bump or a high five. Nothing complicated there. I don't know why they write things like they do, but we're just teaching someone here the right ways to access attention, teaching someone that other ways to access attention, in this case, a fist bump. Nice. So those are the 3 antecedent strategies for attention. We're going to look at the tangibles next. So again, we're just going to deliver time contingent access to tangible. I see a VIP engaging in problem behaviors to access this robot. I'm going to let them play with the robot throughout the day, non-contingent on any behaviors. And then we have the automatic function here, guys, where we're going to be delivering time contingently stimuli likely to compete with the response products, or we're going to deliver stuff that's going to compete with the problem behavior, provide access to sources of stimulation on a time-based schedule. Here we have the fidget spinner. I don't see many of these anymore. I don't know if you guys still do. Remember when these were everywhere, everywhere. Time contingent delivery of prescription drugs or drug substitutes. So this is an important one where we're going to provide medication on a time-based schedule. And I think what the important part here to really recognize, guys, is that when you have VIPs on PRNs, and we're not doctors, and I don't want to make any recommendations without the doctor's approval. But what I could think about is if a VIP is engaged, it has a PRN where we're going to give it, if we contingent on problem behaviors, for instance, we see this person engage in self-injury, and then we're going to dish out a medication to help stop that behavior. Okay, that makes sense to me. But what could happen is that these medications could have powerful reinforcing effects on the brain. So we want to make, so what I like to do when I see this kind of happening, I'm like, is this, and I've seen this before, is this problem behavior being maintained by this drug interaction? So I really would want to have a conversation with the doctor, if I could, if I'm allowed, and talk to them about delivering this medication on a time-based schedule. So instead, delivering it on like 8, 4, and 8, or whatever the doctor recommends, to help lower the chances of problem behaviors being reinforced by prescription medications. And I've seen it before with our VIPs that they would seek out the mother, because the mother would be the person dishing out these highly impactful medications, and they are delivering it immediately after problem behaviors, and the problem behavior shot through the roof in this case, where the VIP was engaged in problem behaviors to access these medications. So my advice would be to talk to the doctor, work with the doctor to deliver medication on a more time-based schedule, 4, 8, 4, and 8. And guys, I'm not always successful with my avocation in this. The doctors have their own reasons, and I can't pretend to be an expert in medications. But I could still present my ideas to the doctor to see what they think about it, to see if that's a reasonable idea or something we can do to help prevent that reinforcement of problem behaviors. So time contingent, you guys see this time contingent schedules keep popping up in our antecedent strategy training. So be thinking about them when you're working on problem behaviors. Transfer repetitive features out of restraints by fading them out. So, we're slowly going to, and of course, we don't want to be restraining anyone, but we're going to slowly fade them away as we kind of move forward to help reduce the reinforcing effects of restraints by reducing physical features of restraints, which we don't use, and gradually increasing time without restraints. I mean, this is probably in other kind of settings that maybe use this. We're not going to spend time on this one. And that is our antecedent-based strategies training. Do you guys have any questions? I know we kind of rushed through the end side. We do have a couple minutes if anyone wants to talk about any of these strategies that we've talked about, anything that you want to add, or any times you've been effective in any one of these strategies. So what I want you guys to do is, like, when you're working on your antecedent section of your behavior support plan, is take a look at this training. And I do it when I'm wearing my antecedent strategies for my behavior support plans. I look at this training. I go through it and I see if any of these ideas in here could be effective for our VIP, and I'm going to put them in the behavior support plan. So hopefully this takes the guesswork out of your work a bit when you're working on antecedent strategies, that you're going to choose from this training. And this isn't like a whole list of every antecedent strategy, but it's a lot of them. And you could get a lot of good ideas. And it's not good enough to just throw the name of this strategy in your plan, but individualize it to your VIP. Explain what kind of attention, explain how we're providing assistance, explain how we're kind of going to practice, what kind of exercise we're going to practice. And we're going to really individualize these strategies to our VIP based on their preferences and based on what they've told us that they enjoy. Does anyone have anything to add? Okay, guys. Well, I really appreciate your attention this morning. Thank you for attending, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Take care.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you.